I think Kai Havertz has done a really, really good job up front for Arsenal. I have to say, he puts himself about, he wins headers, he links up play well, he's been getting some goals as well. He looks way more comfortable there than he did in midfield, in my opinion. I think his natural role in the team, almost dropping into a false nine alongside Ødegaard in more of a 10 shape, I think it's worked really well for Arsenal, especially in big games. But the rumours won't leave, the reports won't escape us. Arsenal apparently still want a striker. I actually talked in one of my more recent videos about how it looked like Arsenal were maybe, from the recent transfer rumours, looking like they might be happy to pursue with Kai Havertz as a 9 and do something else in midfield instead. But David Ornstein has come out in The Athletic answering a question, saying that on transfer priorities, my understanding is that this will be a striker, and I touched on some potential names previously. Then there is the desire to add backup for Saka and Martinelli, so that's going to be another winger, a number 8 or number 6 depending on other movements in that area, possibly a left back and a backup goalkeeper if Ramsdale leaves. So he's been very clear that the priority is still to bring in a striker, which surprises me, I have to say, because, well, it doesn't really, because a lot of other reporters are saying that the priority is a striker, but with Havertz playing there, you've got Jesus, Trossard's played false 9, he gave Eddie a new deal recently. You think, is there really room? I think there is, but sometimes the way Arteta acts makes you think that maybe he doesn't feel there is room. So this will be an interesting one to cover for Arsenal, but I've got to say, I've covered it extensively already. Some of you might be watching this video going, James, another video on Arsenal strikers? Yes, but let me defend myself. Let me just go through them really quickly. So I did a video on who I felt Arsenal's next striker should be, which is a little bit like this video, but we had very different information back then, and I went through the different, I looked at it differently. You're going to understand how I've approached this video, but please stay and watch the rest, because it is different, I promise. I've also did one on Osimhen, and I just felt he was on his way to Chelsea. I had to cover that as well. We did one on Mbappe. It wasn't really a serious video about our next striker target, but felt it was worth discussing whether we should go into bankruptcy to get Kylian Mbappe at the club. We did one talking about that report that David Ornstein alluded to, the Ferguson, Gyokeres and Sesko rumours as well. And we talked, like I mentioned earlier in this video, about Kai Havertz potentially being a 9 going into the Brentford game, where Ivan Toney felt like that was the audition for him at the Emirates. So this is an opinion piece. This isn't a report. This isn't, well, I've given you some news from Ornstein there, but this isn't about me going through loads of different reports and telling you what I think is going to happen. This is purely a what I want to happen, because I put the Ivan Toney thing aside. That was a good month ago, in fairness, probably over a month ago, and I've changed my mind. I've had a really good thing of this, but from a different perspective now. And what I've got here, as you can see, are my requirements for Arsenal's new number 9. I've got that they need to bring some height. I think that's crucial. They've got to be entering their best years. They've got to be good enough to start. That's obvious, right? I don't think we can just get someone who's coming to be a backup role. Havertz is doing that read to Jesus while he's not really fit and firing right now. They've got to have proven output. They've got to be versatile, and they can't destroy our budget. That, for me, is the set of requirements, criteria that I want for Arsenal's next number 9. I think you'd all probably agree with that, but let me know in the comment section below if there's anything I've missed. So I want to give you a full list of strikers that have been linked or talked about with the move to Arsenal. You can see there from Ivan Toney to Osimhen, Watkins, Gyokeres, Solanke, Sesko, Xerxes, Vlahovic, Isak and Ferguson. And what I'm going to do is go through each one of those requirements that I've mentioned and remove those players to see who we're left with at the very end. If you've looked at the thumbnail, you know who we're going to end up with, but that's not the point. I'm trying to explain why I've come to that conclusion. Let's go through it. So first of all, brings height. The only player you lose from this list is Ollie Watkins. At 5'11", maybe just about 6 foot. I think he's about 5'10", 5'11". That's not to say not a brilliant hold-up player. He is. He's very strong. He uses his body well. But he's not that completely different profile in terms of height that we're probably looking at and talking about. So Ollie Watkins gets removed from the group there. Then we go into the next one, and I've got entering their best years, and you lose a few players here. You lose Xerxes, Ferguson and Sesko. I think Xerxes 22, Ferguson's about 19 or 20, I think 19, and Sesko's 20 himself. It just feels like they are too young. Xerxes at Bologna, fair play, he's getting some football. He was a youngster at Bayern Munich. I think Ferguson, still needs a few more years at Brighton. And Sesko's only just become a starting striker at Leipzig. So it doesn't feel like they're entering their best years at all. They're probably still 3-4 years off that. So then I go into good enough to start. And the two I lose are Solanke and Toney. Now, I think Ivan Toney, when he's at his best, I think he certainly is good enough to play in the Arsenal team. But I don't think he's better than Gabriel Jesus at his best. Now, Gabriel Jesus, because of the injuries, we don't know if he's really going to get back to that. But I don't think Ivan Toney can get to a level personally that is as good as the Jesus that started for Arsenal at the start of last season. That's just my opinion. Then we move into proven output, and the only player we lose there is no one. It's the same for Osimhen, Gyokeres, Vlahovic and Isak, all have proven output, to be fair to them. Gyokeres certainly this season, Osimhen winning the title in Napoli, Vlahovic, we just know what he's been doing for a few years now in Serie A, and Isak's numbers are actually a little bit more impressive this season than you think, but we'll come to that a little bit later. So then the last one is versatility, and as you can see, the last remaining player is Isak. Osimhen, Gyokeres, Vlahovic, all very much nines who lead the line, who play at the top, feed the striker, and they will score. That is the idea of them as nines. Isak has that little bit more about him in that he does look a player who can play in wider areas a little bit more comfortably. He has done it in his career, not that much to be fair, but he has played in slightly wider areas. He's more of a dribbler and a ball carrier. So I've ended up at Alexander Isak as my number one. And it's not just because of the criteria. I haven't just gone, right, we're going to do this as purely a mental exercise. Here it is. Let's chalk them off and see who I end up with. I wanted Alexander Isak before I built all that. I just wanted to try and show you graphically why everything leads to him for me. Now, first of all, it's because if you go back through his skill set, brings height. Well, he's about 6'2", 6'3", I think. Now, he's not like a towering figure who wins loads of headers, but he's got the height, he can work on that, he's got the physical attributes for that. He's entering his best years at 24, there's no doubt he's got 5-6 years getting to his best at the moment, there's no question. He's definitely good enough to start. When he's at his best, I think he is good enough as a dribbler, as a ball carrier, as a finisher. I think he is good enough. He's got proven output, which we'll get to in a little bit. I keep hinting at it, but we will get to it. He's versatile, can play out wide as I mentioned, and he doesn't destroy our budget. That was the last thing that I had in there, that Alexander Isak might not cost an absolute fortune. So let's break all that down. First of all, it's worth mentioning that there were loads of reports that Arteta and Edu loved Alexander Isak, so I think there's a good chance that they go and try and get him again. But if you look at his output here, he's got, in 29 games this season for Newcastle, he's got 16 goals with 12 in 20 in the Premier League. That's really impressive considering he has had quite a few injuries. To tally 16 goals in 29 games, I think is really impressive, and fair play to him. That is not a bad output for someone who's had injury problems. Now, if you're worried about his injury problems and his availability, well, if you look here at his last 5 seasons, this season included, I mean, the last 2 seasons at Newcastle, he might have missed more football than you'd want. He's missed 8 Premier League games this season already, but 32 out of 38, 34 and 37 in the 3 seasons for Sociedad before. So he's not really an injury-prone player. He's just been a bit more unfortunate at Newcastle. So you've got a player who's got decent output, very good output this season, good output, and I think he can only get better. I think finishers can develop that as they get older, and he's got everything else you could possibly want. He's got the skill set, the versatility, and he's largely available for most of the season. I don't think injuries are as much of a worry as people would think it is. So why would Newcastle sell it? They're at the start of this project. They've got the mega rich owners. They've got ambitions themselves. If you look at this headline here, Newcastle admit they could be forced to sell stars after announcing a £150 million loss. We also covered this in a video, as you can see here, the title, Newcastle forced to sell star players, I asked 2 months ago. Because when we talked about in that video is that Newcastle United, they have mega rich owners, but because of the, some will say nonsense of FFP, and they probably have a point, Newcastle can't just splash the cash willy-nilly. The problem that Newcastle have is that to spend the kind of money you want on players and be within the FFP regulations, you've got to either recoup loads of money from player sales or have really high revenues which are generated through lots of things, shirt sales, ticket sales, but really it's about sponsorship as well. Kit manufacturers, sponsors on the front of the shirt, that kind of stuff. And Newcastle's revenues, despite getting into the Champions League, don't match even Tottenham, let alone Arsenal, Man United, Man City and the rest. So they are in a little bit of a situation where they still have to sell a little bit, especially if they've got really big assets, to try and then spend big. And I think Arsenal could take advantage of this because Alexander Isak, who they might feel hasn't proven his fitness as much as they'd want, who they signed for about 50-60 million, they probably could get for 80-85, and that could be a deal that Arsenal are willing to do. Now, why would he not be 100 million? He might be, but if they need to do a deal, and actually he probably might want that move, I think I've read somewhere that he might be keen on it, I don't know, I feel like a deal could be struck somewhere, rather than Arsenal spending 100, 105 million on a player that isn't as proven in the Premier League as Alexander Isak, and doesn't have the complete varied set of traits that you'd want in your next number 9. So I don't know. I'd love to know your thoughts in the comment section below. Alexander Isak is the one I would go and get. Of course, if he's going to cost 110 million, which is what Newcastle fans are watching this might go, he's not going any less for 100 million or deluded. Fine, maybe. But I think it's worth exploring. And that would be, the whole point of this video is, that would be the player that I would be going to look at first and foremost, top of that list, if I were in charge of transfers at Arsenal. But I'm not. Good thing I'm not, because I've had doubts about the ones that Arsenal have made and have been proven wrong. So there you go. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And Alexander Isak to Arsenal, would you want it done? And if not, who would you like to see Arsenal put the money towards for the big number 9 coming this summer? And I just want to say a really big thank you for watching this video. If you did enjoy it, actually hit the links right here to watch more content like this, including my Football First podcast, which drops every Monday to Friday at 6 AM. And I know it's annoying, I am really sorry to have to ask, but if you want to show support to the channel, hitting the like and subscribe buttons help promote the content much more than you could possibly know. Thanks again.